some control over it, but not now. I don't have any. So I did have a slide presentation, but my talk is not dependent on it. It was only going to enhance the things that I had to say. So we won't have slides this morning because somehow it didn't get onto my thumb drive. Okay, we've had 3 weeks of negative, dark talk. Things that's going on in the world that is just not the things that don't make us happy, you know. So today we're going to change that and talk about some things that are encouraging. Actually, some of the stuff that we'll talk about this morning has a lot to do with your life also, and how you face the problems that you run into. So the core thing that we need to always remember is that Jesus is real. We're going to hit this morning. Jesus is real, and he's the anchor that we hold on to in our lives. You saw last week where Eric was put into prison. There was no light. And how would you like to do that for 7 weeks? Can you imagine be put in a room with no light except when the guard came and gave you some food to eat? There was no light. That's just something to keep in mind. We struggle with things that depress us. That would be really depressing. For the human spirit, that's a hard thing to get past. That is a method of torture that the bad guys use a lot of times. So let's look at this morning's video.
We have seen it in China especially, but also in Iran, that there's a huge growth of the underground church, and it is at the time of a very intense persecution. That is not to say that we want that persecution so we can grow. Absolutely not, because it's a horrible, horrible thing. But it is to say that God is able to grow the church even in those circumstances.
And that's why I see church growth in these countries where persecution is really is growing faster, and that's not because people don't have anything else to clinch into it, but because people there experience God every day.
What happens here is that during the persecution, Christians, they cling to their identity and they cling to the Word of God.
What carried me in this time were 2 things. The Bible verses that I learned by heart, because I was not even able to read my Bible, because I did not have any light. And the second thing, what kept me alive, I was holding to this handkerchief every single day. And this handkerchief became like gave me hold, not because of the practical use of it, but because of the Bible verse that was written on it. And it was this Bible verse, "The Lord is my light." And in this dark moment, He was my light and my refuge. And I could see that. I could see that even though the cell is so dark. But there I experienced the reality, Jesus being the light of the world. And that's what carried me. 7 weeks.
I see what's happening in China. What God has been doing is more of a hidden blessing, in spite of the persecution. After all, when Communist Party took power in 1949, less than 1 million Christians existed in China after 1.5 centuries of foreign missionaries, hard labor, and even martyrdom. But the 70 years under communism, with non-stop persecution, with the animosity continues, the revival and growth of especially Christian faith has been phenomenal. I mean, it's the commonly kind of acknowledged number of Chinese Christians now is over 100 million. So from less than 1 million to now 100 million, that's a 100-fold growth. So only God and His Holy Spirit. And the secret is, the Chinese believers, they know this is not a thing, so they know that whether they are free or they are being imprisoned, the gospel prevail. So if they are free, they will continue to establish the house churches, preach the gospel faithfully, continue to establish prison churches. Let alone in the Chinese context, actually the persecution, even in quantitatively, it grew the church because many persecutors, from Saul to Paul, and being amazed, those who are persecuted, that under them have such an amazing dynamic life after persecution. So many prison guards, even prison officials, have come to follow Jesus. They witness, this kind of a faith. Their God is real. Their God is life. I think it's something, maybe the church in the free world can learn from the persecuted church.
I went the first time back to the Middle East after many years, and I went to Egypt, and I was teaching in Cairo in a seminary there. Teaching was done. A Southern Sudanese came to me with his gray hair, and he came to me and he started to speak to me. He asked me where I came from. I told him my name, my family name, and lived in Khartoum. And this pastor started to cry. And I asked him why. And then he looked at me and he said to me, "Do you remember me?" I told him, "I can't remember you. I have never met you." And then he would look me into the eye, straight into the eye, and he would say to me, "My name is Zachariah." So that was this. I almost killed one day. I met him 25 years later. And the minute he said his name, his broken arm and his broken leg, and I saw the injuries in his face. The injuries in his face where actually I damaged him. I saw his eye, which he no longer see because we injured him. And it came a silent moment where I didn't know what to say. I expected many things that he would say, but one thing I never expected to hear from him. Zachariah would look me straight into my eye and said to me, "Yasser, because you hated me so much, you persecuted me so much, I always prayed for you." And on that moment in Cairo, in the year of 2007, I grasped why God would deal with a person like me. Because Zachariah prayed for me. I hated him. He prayed for me, persecuted him. He prayed for me. He moved his broken arm, got his bag, opened his bag. He took his Bible out. He opened it. And in the first page, he wrote my name. praying 25 years for me. That's the answer to persecution, to hate, is prayer.
We just have credits left on it, so you can cut that if you want. Several remarkable. Eric said right there at the end that prayer is the answer. And you know, we try so hard ourselves to fix things in this life, both with us and with those people around us. We try to do things ourselves, and this is a lesson right here. Eric and can't remember the other guy's name now. The situation, you've seen it develop clear through the 4 films. In the beginning, Eric really persecuted and tried to kill the Sudanese Christian that was there, and you saw the thing evolve. And it came down to the end here where the Sudanese Christian came to him and said, "I have been praying for you for 2 years." Imagine that. Beginning of the film, Dr. Susanna Kokanen was talking about church growth under persecution. It sounds like the two should not go together, the two thoughts. People being abused and beaten up and killed just because of their faith. But we see that even today. Actually, the Taliban is in Afghanistan and taking over as the U.S. forces are being withdrawn. That had anything to do with the United States, Christians, anything. Guy that was talking about China estimated the number of Christians in 1949, when the communists took over, was under 1 million. Today it's 100 million. The Council on Relations, it's an independent group. Let's see now. It says the Council of Foreign Relations is a United States nonprofit think tank specializing in U.S. policy and affairs. So they gather a lot of information about a lot of different things. And so one of the things that they gathered information on was the growing population of Christians in China. So they estimated that from 1999 to now, that there was a 10% increase every year. Also said that by 2030, if it continues at the rate that it's going, there'll be more Christians in China than anywhere else in the world. Isn't that amazing? It's tempting to discredit some of the wild numbers that they just pull out of the air. When we pay attention to details about news stories that we hear, and as we're talking to missionaries that we know, and reading articles from Christian perspective going on in the world today, a lot of points are verifiable. When we took our trip to Tanzania, right away there was, remember, I think it was like 7 people were baptized. You look at the picture of all of this persecution that's going on, and it would seem like that they would be successful in stamping out Christianity. But that's not. Let's see, when there was a lot of conflict going on a number of years ago in Iraq, that general area. And so whenever conflict happens like that, people leave. They want safety. They want peace in their lives. To stay in countries like Turkey and others as refugees, they just pick up and just leave. And so Christians started those kids. And it was such a breath of fresh air to those people. They found out that God is a loving God. Because, in Eric's words, he was taught to hate Christians. He didn't know anything about them. He was taught to hate them and to kill them. But he found out, even as he was beating up the Chinese fellow student, that it was a nice guy. If you remember that from a couple of, he was actually a nice guy. And so perception of the world in us makes a difference. The way that we live our lives, that makes a difference. They wonder where we get our from. How can we go on day to day, day after day, and continue when we face the same problems that they do? And it's discouraging for them because they don't have anything else to hold on to. But it makes a difference in how people see us. And you know it's true. We already discussed this a few lessons. Have you been in the presence of somebody where it just takes you a few minutes and you don't know anything about them? Maybe you can have a conversation with them, but you see their actions, the words that they're speaking, and you realize that that person has an inner core of peace that's unusual. So God has a profound effect on us as people, not just in our mind, but in our whole demeanor. About the here's a story about the increase of other parts of the world. A mission to if in a few years being sent from Africa to the United States, that I hear about us send other parts of them to convert them and stuff. But you know that we're pretty deplorable in the country. And so that touches other, there's so much influence that the United States has. That world, such a, they see that going on here and it impacts. There is a great in Nairobi Great Commission School. Some Christians from the Church of Christ started that because the change of governments, which happens often in Africa or third world countries, things that they will do for any kind of just their. So Christians got together and started the Nairobi Great Commission School. The next time that the foreigners were kicked out, their core built there of natives to where they could continue the work. And that's what has happened with that school. Due to our visit, it's not unusual in third world countries that everything that they own and everything that we have. Remember what I said about it once before, facing danger. Why of being Christians, they knowing of danger, ways of getting it accomplished. In our personal evangelism, to a lot of people has taken very effective here in the United States because evangelism come to church most effective.